Johnny was the most unique person I ever met. And I'm saying that in a kind way. He had the ability, and you know very well because you worked the show with him, he had the ability to pull stuff out of the air and make something out of it. And, with a budget of zip, he put together an interesting show. Offbeat, you had to be a little crazy, I think, to watch the show on a regular basis. But I only say that because he came at what he did in a very unique, creative way. And of course, he was a very professional broadcaster. His background in radio, coming out of Canada, going to the U.S., becoming very successful in major American markets, and coming back to Canada. And we were fortunate to be able to plug in with him and have him involved on the station. And I used to sit on pins and needles some mornings watching the show, saying, well, what's Johnny going to do next?
Well, because it was live as well.
Oh, yeah,
right?
live and
taped inserts.
But that was his creative shtick. He was able to pull stuff out of nowhere. He would start, I'm sure, there were days when John came into the studio and said, well, what am I going to do today? And something would happen, and he'd make a whole show out of it, and that's creativity.
He was a big fan of Ernie Kovacs.
Yes.
If you remember Ernie, yes.
Well,
I know he told me that.
John was a wonderful deep thinker. John was a very intelligent, is a very intelligent thinker. And he, as I said, he was able to pull things together at a moment's notice and make a fun show out of basically starting with not much of anything.
So his first show, was it Horoscope Dollars?
Oh gosh, could be. Details on where and what followed what is a little.
But I remember he would do the Horoscope Dollars thing. I don't remember the structure of the show other than he had that big bank vault door behind him, and there was a LED numbers or whatever, and he'd phone people up and have them guess the number, and he'd punch them in, and if it opened up the door, they won money or a prize or something like that. And then I think that led to Trivia Company, or no, Tempo, Ontario, I believe, before he went to.
Could be. I remember pairing him up with Betty.
Yeah, I don't think he was very pleased about that.
Well, I won't comment, but
no.
I can understand why he might feel that way.
I think it was more because he was always more independent.
Oh yeah,
right.
John.
I mean, I put on YouTube the actual very first episode of Morning Magazine, and you can just tell there wasn't very much chemistry between Betty and Johnny. I mean, it comes out immediately that there was.
Well, again, I'm speculating a little bit but I think Betty was very structured.
Yeah.
And her on-air studio experience was a very structured experience with respect to having things, not necessarily every word scripted, but she wanted to know where things were going to go next. And John was very off the cuff, and it's tough to put those. And I guess, again, I sat in the program manager's office and said, gee, if I put Betty and Johnny together and have them do a show, that should make, because Betty, let's be honest, I mean, our daytime local audience numbers were good, but they certainly didn't come up to where you got to eventually in prime time with network television. But CRTC said, X amount of Canadian content. So you either had to buy the Canadian content or produce the Canadian content. And to produce the Canadian content for daytime television, it was a struggle, especially here in the Kitchener market, because the market is a medium market, to produce local television with other than a pretty basic budget. The salary for the talent and not much else. Whatever you do, if you have guests, they have to be guests that don't need to be paid, et cetera, that kind of philosophy. So,
And well, just talking about the local programming, I remember recalling that I think it was 1988, we were producing 36 different shows that were multiple series.
probably. I mean, as you recall, those studios, 7 days a week, almost some days 24 hours a day. And it was, and that leads me to making sure I make a comment with respect to our staff. Our staff was amazing, absolutely amazing. The people would change, the faces would change once in a while, but hey, we had a pretty steady staff that were there for a career. A lot of people, that was their career, 864. And everybody worked so hard, worked crazy hours, worked weekends, and everything was done in a very professional way. And again, the station was successful because of the fact that we had very professional people who were prepared to, give it up, give their all to make whatever they were doing successful. And we couldn't have produced the number of hours of television that we produced if we had not had a staff that was prepared to go all the way to do that kind of to produce that kind of work schedule over a 7-day week.